So we left off last time. We had successfully transferred our footer and our content divs into Dreamweaver. From Photoshop to Dreamweaver, we had used just a little tiny slice of the content div and repeated it vertically so that it allowed that to be flexible. And you also remember the other major benefit of using a small slice of a background like that and repeating it? There was another one that's actually really big. It's a big reason. No? It's to facilitate faster loading so that you don't have to load a huge, big image as your background. You just load this little tiny slice. So we're actually going to incorporate that probably twice more, just to make things a little faster. But you don't have to. It just does make things faster. Now in the case of the content area, you kind of have to, because you want to make it so that it gets longer or you know, as there's more content, or shorter, depending upon that sort of thing. So, you know, there is a little bit that you have to do. Let me go into Dreamweaver here, make sure, yeah, I need to get back onto this website here. So essentially, if I look at Dreamweaver and I open up my index.html, oops, get out of the code, you'll see that we basically have this. It's just the header and the content area, and we haven't put the header in at all. Now, if I go and look at this design and look at what I did here, don't need the rulers anymore. What you'll probably see is my header is right here. And then if you can see pretty well, you'll see I've got a slice here on the left that kind of deals with the corner piece and the little ribbon here. And then I've got a very similar slice on the right that also deals with this corner, and then this part of the ribbon. And that's actually really, really, really important to have those slices like that for this design. And that is because I can't, well, I shouldn't say this completely, but I wanted to make almost all of this out of divs. And you can do that. You can have a div and you can make it have a border, okay? And you can also tell the computer to use rounded corners. But the problem with that is not all browsers do rounded corners. Internet Explorer, which is roughly 48% of the internet, or 40% of the people who view websites use Internet Explorer, which is awful because it's the worst browser out of the 4 major ones, at least right now. It's getting better, but it doesn't do rounded corners. So if you wanted to do something graphic where you wanted to make a div like that, it won't do that for you. There's all sorts of things, honestly, that Explorer won't do. So you have to kind of think about, you know, as you guys, if any of you get into websites more, that's one of the major considerations is, okay, I want to do this. Can I do it with code, or do I have to make a graphic? And in this case, we have to make a graphic. So I had to kind of do these corner pieces. So basically what you're gonna see is I've got a couple subsets. One, I'm gonna have a div right in here, and then I'm gonna have a div on the outside, which means I'm gonna have to have a third div in the middle. And then this middle division right here is going to incorporate the menu bar and then the title area. So then I'm gonna have 2 divs here. So this is why it's kind of complicated, and I wanted to just give you, do this as a separate demo, is because now we're going to have divs inside divs inside divs. All right? And for me, the only really great way to do this is to kind of check my code. So I'm going to teach you a little bit more about the code. We talked a little bit about it, but just so that you can double check what's going on when you start creating these divs. So the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to check, oh, thank you. I'm going to check my divs here and check the size, just like I did before. So this first div right here, which is this piece right here, if I just double click on it, it's 95 pixels wide. Well, that's nice, okay? So I did a nice even number. That'll be really easy to do. So now I'm going to go into Dreamweaver, and right here I'm going to click, see where it says Content for ID header goes here. We're going to take that text very carefully. We're going to delete it. And why, when I say very carefully, is if you go too much, you can actually, it'll think you're highlighting the entire div, and then it'll delete the entire header. Oops, we don't want to do that. So we're going to delete that, but the div is still there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to insert another div tag, and I'm going to call this, let's just call this header, and then I'll just call it left corner, just like that. That makes sense, right? Left corner of the header. I'm going to click New CSS Rule. I'm going to click OK. Now I'm going to get my box here. Let's go back to Photoshop, which is kind of nice how you can go back and forth like this. Turn off my background, 95 by 185, and now I'm going to go Save for Web and Devices. So I'm just going to do this selection only. Make sure I'm set to a PNG. Click Save. Should go right into the same folder, and I'm just going to go Images Only and Selected Slices Only, and I'm just going to save out this this background. Boom. Now the only thing I didn't do is I forgot to double check what I would called it, but oh, title left. I think I'll figure that out. Okay, so it's title. I probably should have named it header, but it's okay. It makes sense. So now I go back into Dreamweaver. This is what's cool. Oops, I forgot my my dimensions already. 95 by 185. Okay. So we're going to go back to Dreamweaver. 95 by 185. And now I can go to my background image, and I'm going to hit the Browse button. And there's my title left. And I'm going to click Choose. And I definitely do not want it to repeat. Oh, it's thinking. Which, this is redundant because if the div is the exact same size as the background image, it won't repeat anyway. But you know what? I like to set it anyway just in case. No repeat. Done. And click Apply. I mean OK because it's the first time. Oh, look at that. Now we've got our div in there. And you can see that it's got content in the div. And it's got the text there. So very carefully we're going to highlight our text and we're going to delete it. Now we get to do the middle section. And here we're actually not going to do a background yet. So what I want to do is I'm going to go back into Photoshop, and I've got this this section here is my middle section. We're just going to get the size from it. 1075 by 102. Okay, well my numbers weren't exactly the best there as far as the being even, but that's okay. 1075 by 102. So now I'm going to go back in the Dreamweaver, and I'm going to create another div. We'll call this header. Whoops, no equals. Center area. New CSS rule. Click OK. Go to my box. It was 1075 by 102. Now, I'm making a mistake on purpose, and I want you all to see what's about to happen. I'm going to click OK. Click OK. Oh. Why is it over top? What's that? I didn't do the no repeat? No, that would have to do with the background. There's two things that I didn't do right here. Actually, I made two mistakes. No, the padding will, maybe eventually the padding will help us, but no, it has to do with when you do divs, okay, and you start a new div, it's automatically going to want to drop the second div below the first. They travel in vertical order unless you set something else. Do you remember what you have to set from the very first? This is like 2 weeks ago, so I'm not mad if you don't. It's the float. If we want divs to float next to each other in a row horizontally, we have to set the float to left. So what I need to do is go back to my CSS here. No, I really want you there. Thank you. Take my left corner, go to the box, set the float to left. Then take the center area and also set my float to left. And it still doesn't work. Oh, I think I might know why. It created a div inside the left corner div. Oops. So, if that's the case, which I think it is, there's two ways of going about and doing this. I can totally delete this div. Okay, so just go in here, select the div, and I can delete it. Okay, which means it's now gone. Or I could go into I can highlight it, hit split, and I was correct. See, it says div ID equals header center area, and notice it's inside the div left corner. Make that so you guys can read it. See, here's header left corner right here. That's where it starts. It doesn't end until the slash div. Do you remember that demo I did on how HTML works? When you have a code, you have a beginning tag and you have an ending tag. Well, notice the new div that I just created, the center area, was put inside those two tags. Oops. Okay, so that's why it's not behaving nicely. But since we're not going to really do a ton of code here, I'm just going to delete the div. So now it's gone. Now I'm going to make sure that if you look really carefully, can you see the cursor blinking slowly there? See that? Now I know I'm outside the div. It's hard to see sometimes. So now I'm just going to go and I'm going to insert another div all over again. Now here's what's interesting. I already created the div. So all I have to do is go click, and there's header center area. It remembers it for me, and then click OK. Oh, now it looks good. So that was the first mistake I made. The second mistake I made is when I went into Dreamweaver, I just took the height for this top part, the title area. I need the whole thing first, and then we'll divide that into two. So I need to make it whatever the total height is of these, which is 185. So I made it too short. It's not going to fit. So go to my header center area, go back to my box, and go 185. Okay, so now we're looking pretty good. We've got one more thing to do. So now I can delete that. Make sure that I'm not in the div. So I've clicked outside the div, and I can kind of sort of see it. Well, maybe not. Well, we'll see. We'll know when it goes, if it goes bad. So now I'm going to go back to Photoshop. We're just going to check this last corner. It's 80 by 185, so it's a little bit smaller than the other one. Let's export it out. So save for web and devices. Just make sure we're on the right one. Yes. So save. Save. What is it called? Ooh, title right. At least I'm consistent. So we go back in Dreamweaver. Now we're just going to click in here. We're going to make another div tag. We'll call this header right corner, so that again I'm consistent with that. Click OK. Go to my box. It's 80 by 185. Set my float to left. Or with this end one, I guess I could set it to right, but you don't need to. Set it to left, and then that way they're all just in a row. Go to my background image, browse, title right, choose, background repeat, no repeat, and click OK. Cool. It's nice when things all work like they're supposed to. So now we've got the corner set and we've got the middle area set. Now we need to go back in and set up our two divs. We're going to have two major divs that are going to be in the header bar. And those two divs are this. One is going to be this section of the top title area. And then the next one is going to be the menu bar that's going to be across here. Does that make sense to everybody? So we're going to have two major divs. And then inside the menu bar div, we'll have our button divs. So it can get, it does get a little complicated. But the nice thing is, if you do the names correctly too, one of the important things, and I already explained this about divs, is if you're naming them correctly, like header, and then I'll name the menu bar, I'll either name it main menu, or I'll name it navigation, or something if you do all that correctly. What ends up happening is Google basically loves you. That's essentially what happens. Now let me also say one other thing here. Some of you might be wondering if I could have just not done this one big div here, but just done the two divs top and bottom. And the answer is no. And the reason for that is because of the third div. Because I have to set float to left in order to get them into a row, this center div has to basically be the same height as these two. If it was shorter, it would still float, but then I wouldn't be able to put anything underneath. Okay, so it's kind of got to be in a grid, I guess is what I'm saying. So sometimes in order to do it right, you have to place div within div within div within div to get things to fit all together. But it does work and it is logical, so you will understand it. You know, you just got to be patient. So essentially now I'm going to make sure I'm inside the center area div and I can see the cursors right there. I've clicked inside here. It's good to double click too, that really gets you in there. And now we're going to do our top div here that's going to go across the title area. So I'm going to insert another div tag and we'll call this title area. New CSS rule. I probably should have prefaced that with header, but that's okay, just for alphabetizing. Click OK. Now, do you remember it was 1075 across? Anybody remember how tall? I do. No, it was 102. 185, good, was the total height of the header. We're now just doing this little one across the top. So here we go, height 102. I'm going to keep my float to nothing because then I want the next one, the menu bar div, to be underneath it. So now what I want to do is I need to save out the background image. So let's go into Photoshop. Now if I take a look at this, I've saved this thing as one big whole image. Not a horrible thing, but it's going to take longer to load, isn't it? Right? So what we'll do is I'm just going to ruin the slice here really quick. We're going to just take a little bit of it. Boy, that messed things up, so I'm going to undo it after I do this. And we'll name it header background. Or title background, how about that? That's better. Click OK, and I'm going to save for web and devices. And then I'm just going to hit undo because it messed up a lot of stuff there. But if I'm being smart, I do want to make sure. I'm just going to do a little slice like this. It'll be perfect. Save. Save. Okay, now I'm going to step backwards, make my slice is back to its original size. But if I go into Dreamweaver, now I can set my background to the title background there. And what's cool is, guess what? It's going to repeat. If I hit no repeat, watch what will happen. Click OK, click OK, boom. Now it's just over here in this corner. See that? Okay, because no repeat is in there. But if I go back in here and I go back to my background and I say repeat in the x-axis, oh, look at that. It takes that little wedge that I did and it repeats it across the div here. Really nice, because now I don't have to worry too much about how long it's going to take to load or whatever, because I've got a huge PNG image as my top title area. Now I just have, you know, nothing, basically, just a little tiny slice that's repeated. So I'm just going to click OK. That looks really good. And then again, I'm going to delete this content for title area div, goes there. Now I'm going to make sure that I'm out of the title area div, and we're going to do our menu div, and then we'll call it a day for now. But it's been pretty complicated, but at the same time, you can see what we're doing. And then we'll finish off the header area on Monday. I'll do another demo that'll be a little shorter. So now I need to get my menu bar across the top. Now here's a mistake that I can see some of you might make. You see the space here and you go, oh cool, I'm done, I'm going to go. It might even work. You might even be able to start putting divs in here, but you don't want to do that. You need to make a container div that's right down here that's going to hold your navigation area. And remember, We want to call it navigation so that Google's search engines will know where to look for our menus and our links. So we're going to go back to Photoshop here, and I'm going to click on my div here, which is non-existent. Well, I know how wide it is, right? So there's my, oh, see, I didn't name that very well now, did I? But I can tell how tall it is. The height is 83. I know how wide it is, right? Even though I don't have a full div that goes all the way across, because I already did the top one. So it's 1075 by 83. So now I'm going to go into Dreamweaver, and I'm going to make sure I'm in there, and I'm going to insert one last div for the day, and we're going to call it navigation. Click OK. You can even do nav if you're really lazy. Google will assume that it's navigation. 1075 by 83. We're not going to do the float because we want it to come below our title area. There's no room for it to be next to it anyway, so if you did float left, it should jump down. I don't know what it would do, honestly. It should jump down, but it might not. Now we're going to save out our slice for a background, and then we'll be done. So I've got this little slice here, which is probably what I used for my background. Okay, right here. And but I don't have a good name for it, so we'll call this nav background, just like that. Nav background, nice and easy. So then we're going to go save for web. Make sure that's the one that's selected, save, and save. Now when I go into Dreamweaver, I go to my background, hit my image, there's nav background, very nice, click, choose. Now we're going to do this again, I just want to re-illustrate this. No repeat, click OK, click OK. Oh boy, things got messed up. Oh no, that should be right. Oh, so my navigation div is out somehow, got put outside the center area div that I made. Oops. So, in other words, I made that center area div that's in between the two corners. It's even outside that somehow. I'm not quite sure how that happened, but let's, obviously we're going to undo what we just did. And here's what I'll probably do is I'm going to try and select my, my title area div, and I'm just going to hit the arrow key over 1, right arrow over 1. Now I'm going to insert my div again, choose navigation, click OK. Then it worked. Okay, so there's a little trick. If you're having problems getting the divs in the right place, and you want it right after another, select the one div, then go in, hit the right arrow over once. That'll just move you over one cursor, one letter basically, and then you can put your div in. So now let's take this. You can see the background came in. We've got a content here, which we don't really need. Okay, so we'll delete that. And now we're going to go and we're going to make that background repeat all the way across. So background, repeat in the X, apply. How about that? Starting to look really good. So now what I can do is now I have these divs. Now I have this div, I can start putting buttons in it. I have this div, I can start putting my logo and my title in it, and what we call a tagline, or something like, what I don't know what, but slogans, like a slogan for your product or something like that would go up here. So, Coca-Cola, and then I don't know what their slogan is anymore, but whatever slogan they have for that time over here. For my website, it's photography, design, and education. Okay, so a little tagline there, and I make those links too, just because it's a good idea, so that way people know what I'm about, right? Makes sense. That's what I want people to see. This is what I want people to know, that this is what I'm advertising on my website, basically. if that makes any sense. Okay, now, one last thing just to get you thinking. So now that I've got the backgrounds all set, as I'm starting to get ready to save out the rest of these images, like my buttons, the title, and so on and so forth, it's really important to turn everything off. Because from now on, I need to make sure that I've got no backgrounds turned on. Because if I do, if I save this one here, the title, with my name on it, if I save that out and it's got the white in it, it's going to double in on top of itself, okay, and you're going to see it because they're transparent. They're like at 80% transparency. So then this is going to be a brighter white in that section. Okay, so now that I've already saved out that background and I've got it all set up, guess what? I need to make sure I turn all my backgrounds off so that I'm not saving that out a second time when I start doing my slices. One last time, get all my content in there. But look at this. I mean, basically, in 2 quick demos, if the design is done correctly, and that's the real key, I've got a website background basically built. There's some fine-tuning we need to do to get the text, here correct and get buttons in and titles and stuff. That'll take us another 2 demos, but that's basically it. After this, you can start adding content and you're finished. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay? Cool. All right, we're getting there.